Hey everybody, this is Patrick Cushing from WorkHands, and today we have Chris Ray here, who's going to speak a little bit about his experience. Chris, thanks for joining us. Can you give us some background on your apprenticeship experience and what brings you here today?
Sure, thanks, Patrick. I appreciate it. I'm Chris Ray. I'm currently employed at Steel Incorporated in Virginia Beach, running the apprenticeship program here, actually in the process of rebuilding it. My experience is fairly diverse in the apprenticeship space. I worked for a number of years for a group sponsor in an education setting, and in that context worked with nearly 100 different companies and close to 1,000 apprentices across multiple occupations. And that really built a foundation for me to gain an understanding of some things that worked well and some things that didn't, which ultimately led to my transition into a consulting role to help some people with those same things that work and pitfalls to avoid mindset, and how to actually construct a program within your own walls. And finally landed here and wanted to put that concept to the test at a very significant employer. And given the fact I'd worked with a lot of manufacturers, this opportunity was near and dear to my heart. And so I landed, and now I'm putting all those lessons in place as I rebuild the Steel Apprenticeship Program.
Fantastic. It's a treat here, right? Like I often will speak to somebody who has one side of that experience, they have the sort of education side, some of the employer side. Part of why we're doing this is because so infrequently do people even know what the other side deals with or what that's like. So Chris, you can speak to many different sides of this. I'm going to ask you one question, but I'm sure you have a bit more to say about this than a few other people might. Our focus is how to make apprenticeship simpler. We're asking everybody we talk to from their perspective, how to make apprenticeship simpler. So that's my one question for you as well, Chris. Given what you've seen of the apprenticeship system, like nitty-gritty details, high level, how do we make the apprenticeship system simpler?
Sure, and it might sound counterintuitive because what I'm going to say is you can make your overall life simpler by recognizing that apprenticeship itself is not simple. It isn't just a box you check. It isn't a simple training that you bring someone in and they train in your facility for 4 hours and they leave. So understanding what the scope of things and understanding them up front. So my charge to anyone considering apprenticeship is plan, educate yourself, realize that things need put in place. Don't build this plane as you're flying it. A lot of planning up front will save you hours and hours and many dollars and much frustration down the road. So the planning up front and educating yourself on what supports an apprenticeship. I've worked with, again, many companies, and one of the, I think, failings a bit of the current apprenticeship system is the focus on the registration. Not to say registration isn't important, but the process of registration. Registration is intended to outline the objectives of a program. It's fraught with all of the regulations and legalities, requirements. There's a lot of paperwork, and so it's not unimportant, but it isn't the goal. And I think because it's so often stressed by governmental agencies or certain individuals at times, people complete that registration process and okay, we're done. We have a program. Thank God I reached the finish line. And it's not, it's the starting line. That's where everything begins. I've spoken to in a lot of contexts that one of the things to think about is you could do all the things, all the requirements to get your driver's license. Go through all the process, understand the rules, complete the test. That doesn't make you a good driver. It doesn't mean you know much of anything about what's really going on the road. It certainly doesn't make you a professional race car driver. Um, I think the other context, and again, speaking with a lot of manufacturers, think about this in terms of manufacturing your workforce. You would never go into a product manufacturer and say, well, we want to build a new widget. We know the piece of equipment it takes to manufacture it. We know what the cost. We're going to buy it, and we're going to start manufacturing that widget. That would never be anyone's mindset. You have so many other things that you would want in place prior to getting that piece of equipment delivered. You have a market analysis. You need to understand suppliers. You need to understand how it fits with the rest of your organization. You need to have a marketing plan. None of those things are actually about manufacturing the widget, which is the registration part in apprenticeship. They're all the things that make it happen and support it within an organization. So I think if people start to understand that mindset, that there's a lot of support functions and coordination functions, and I use the word a lot, integration. Integrate apprenticeship into your organization. Uh, there's HR objectives. There are, depending on your occupation, whether that's production or in healthcare, that's nursing or whatever it might be. There are a lot of things that touch that occupation that still need to be considered with the apprenticeship program. As part of that planning, I think the other caveat is understand what realistic expectations are. For anyone who maybe gets nudged into apprenticeship, oh, go, let's go do this, and we'll help you. And, again, whether that's at a state or federal level or whatever, it's easy to kind of get pushed ahead of your skis. And you get out, and all of a sudden you're trying to operate a program, and you really didn't even consider all the things to put in place. So that's a key. In order to accomplish that, another thing that I've seen ruin many a program before it started was assigning someone. Okay, Chris, Ray, you're in charge, go run the apprenticeship program. Well, most companies don't employ someone like me who would maybe know how to do it. But even with all of my experiences, I come here to steal, I can't do it myself. I have to have support within HR, within production, within the leadership team, the supervisors of the apprentices. They need to know what's going to be going on, what the time commitment is, what the monetary commitment is. And having that keen understanding of all of these things that can be impacted, and considering, how are we going to communicate? How are we going to track our program? Are we going to have a product like WorkHands? How are we going to know if it's successful? You want to have all of that identified up front. So it might sound like a lot, and because it's important, it maybe is a lot, but the results are infinitely more important, and the return on investment is positive, so that effort is rewarded. Doing it the other way and trying to build a plane as you fly it and learn lessons as you go is way more expensive, way more time consuming. So invest in all of that up front, get a good plan in place, think about all of the things that could come out of this. How does it stack up with other occupations? How are your career paths? Your promotional structure? Think about all of those things. And it really isn't a huge amount of planning when you think about the struggles that everyone has with workforce today and the many, many headaches that come out of that. Give yourself one small headache planning a good apprenticeship program, and you can avoid 10 headaches down the road.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. The premise of these calls obviously is how to make it simpler. I had another person point out, like, look, if there's a return on your investment, there's an investment. Like, this does take some work. This does take some time, right? And I love that you're emphasizing the plan, because oftentimes the plan is just get registered, but not the plan for actually creating great apprentices, which leads to great employees. Now, oftentimes at this point, I would ask, all right, so if you had a magic wand, what would you just solve that? I think you've hit a lot of those points, but if I could just ask you to summarize, like, what are kind of the key parts of the plan? Maybe the parts that often get overlooked. If you're like just bullet point, like, hey, here are like the 5 things that every plan should consider as you get into apprenticeship, what would they be?
Um, Again, I'd start with don't focus on registration as the finish line. Understand that's the rules. It's how things get set up. There's paperwork. Put that in its own context. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying it's a self-contained necessary evil of sorts. But it has to happen. But it does define what you want the results of your program to look like, what the skills you're trying to accomplish. So there's an importance there, but don't think of that as the end. It's the beginning of running your program. It defines what you're going to try to accomplish. Secondly, I use this one a lot. It's another one that derails many a program, and it's that integration throughout the organization. So maybe there's 2 big pieces of that. Everyone in a leadership position needs to be on board with how important this is. If it's getting poo-pooed from anywhere on high, anyone beneath that is going to think, well, then this isn't so important. So if that isn't fully aligned, you're in trouble. Maybe more commonplace that I've seen would be the people just tangential to the program. So if you have an apprentice and their journey worker, even if they happen to understand everything they need to know for apprenticeship, they invariably have a shift manager or a supervisor who's not directly involved. And if that person says, oh no, we can't take time today to have you do your training, we're busy. Well, you're going to be so busy that you're going to work yourself out of business. That you've got to bite the bullet. So having those things, I'd say last one would be, which encompasses a lot of that, consider your HR. How are your job descriptions written? How do you handle performance evaluation? And how are you tracking progress and success of the program at that level, so you can understand along the way, okay, we need to make a tweak here or a pivot there. Those would be key things to really think about entirely up front.
Perfect, perfect. Well, Chris, I had high expectations, certainly met them. I think to summarize, somebody mentioned the making sure you have the end goal in mind, right? The goal is not registration, it's having great people, on your team, making sure it's integrated throughout the organization, and particularly making sure your sort of supervisors, your journey workers, and HR are fully on board. So this is just a core competency of the organization, not something that's tacked on. So fantastic stuff, Chris. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.
Appreciate it, Patrick. Thank you.